In my mid-20s, after working hard at a financial institution I set up as an independent financial advisor in my small hometown. I first met Amanda Stonier when she contacted me for advice. She was a local girl, also in her mid-20s, with a 5-year-old daughter Leanne. Amanda had recently set up an internet business and had spare capital to invest. She entrusted me with £50,000, which I invested safely to secure an average 7% return, not spectacular but all right. We met occasionally to discuss her portfolio, which became more of a social event over the years. With her work ethic and entrepreneurial spirit, her business really took off and soon she had hundreds of thousands to invest. This would be too much for me, so I put her in touch with some well-respected companies who had far more expertise than me. Part of her investments went into early US tech and Bitcoin, and so with her business flourishing she became an extremely rich lady. Her business quickly outgrew our small town, so a few years later she moved everything to London, where there was a much larger pool of skilled programmers. Surprisingly, she didn't move her relatively small investments she held with me and would invite me up to her home to review things. This was not strictly necessary, but I thought she just used it as an excuse to keep in touch with her hometown, have a general natter and discuss mutual friends. We would always flirt a little and she would sometimes look at me in a strange way, but I knew nothing would ever develop for several reasons. Firstly, because of my short 5 feet 3 inches stature and slight weak frame, which was once confirmed to me by my cousin Marilyn after she had overpowered me in a tennis match. "Why, there is nothing of you, Nigel Brown, no wonder your strokes are so soft." Actually, I liked my soft features and small, slight body because it made it possible to wear and look quite nice in the clothes I favored. Sexually, I was heterosexual but submissive and preferred to be the girl in a relationship, which explains my overriding reason for not trying to take it any further with Amanda. How do you explain to someone like Amanda Stonier you are heterosexual but erotically you would like to be dressed as a girl and kept under her control? For a repressed but proud man, impossible. Anyway, I knew she had a young daughter from a failed marriage, so I had no reason to believe she was anything other than totally straight. Amanda Stonier, the statuesque brunette, in total contrast to me, was 5 feet 10 inches tall with a toned body and super fit from her regular trips to the gym. She particularly enjoyed weight training as she liked to feel strong and powerful. Sexually, she was heterosexual and dominant, so really wanted to be the man in a romantic relationship. Finding the right sort of man was therefore difficult, particularly now she was well known. How do you tell a short little chap you want to physically overpower and humiliate him? She did often fantasize about her hometown financial advisor in that way. However, she had known me for so long and to some extent our meetings were still businesslike, it was difficult for her to bring up the subject. She knew I was single but had no way of knowing about my true submissive nature. I had visited various mistresses in London who catered for my unusual tastes. Without exception, they were all very understanding and lovely ladies. Well-educated, women of the world, who had seen everything and seemed to enjoy their profession. In my view, they provide a valuable service to many frustrated men who might otherwise, possibly, harm themselves. They are more like mental therapists and probably should be paid extra by the NHS. I also attended a few parties for like-minded people where the subs and doms could dress as they pleased. I would normally dress as a schoolgirl or even a younger girl in a frilly dress. I met a few nice dominant ladies but never made a real connection, so I'd almost given up hope in ever finding the right lady. After 10 years our meetings would have carried on in the same way, but for a chance encounter Amanda had at her book club. She enjoyed the conversations with the bright intelligent women and the frank exchange of views without the obsequiousness that came with being the head of a company. She was particularly interested in a tall lady who made no secret of the fact she worked as a mistress. Amanda made a point of introducing herself, but the lady already knew her from an article in the FT. She had shares in Amanda's company, so they had a general chat about business before Amanda could steer the conversation towards the lady's work. Her real name was Annabelle Smythe, but as a mistress she went by the name of Miss Geraldine Sharp. By all accounts she made a fortune. Amanda asked if it was hard work. Yes, it can be, but it is so much fun. You see, I am a natural dominant and just love humiliating men. She laughed and continued. You know, in the extremely unlikely event of your business empire collapsing, with your imposing presence and looks, you would make a wonderful mistress. Pleased you think so, because, to be truthful, I am a dominant as well. I am not into all the leather gear, more domestic discipline and spanking. A nice little sissy would suit me fine. After that they got on like a house on fire and exchanged telephone numbers. A few days later Amanda visited Annabelle at her lovely home. Soon they were laughing about Annabelle's work and her wide variety of clients. Because of her high charges, the men came from various professions: medics, directors, politicians, actors, etc., etc. Naturally, no names were mentioned, as secrecy and discretion are paramount for a mistress. Yet Annabelle was comfortable discussing, in general terms, about what went on. She talked in depth about her unnamed clients' likes and dislikes and explained the most important element is the psychological understanding between a dom and her sub. Now I know your inclinations. You must come to one of my morning and afternoon parties. The subs will be falling at your feet, and you never know, you might find the sort of little chap you want. Amanda arranged to take a day off work. When the date arrived, she entered the venue with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. She soon spotted Annabelle standing at the bar in her Miss Geraldine Sharp persona, clad in leather, the archetypal female dom. Amanda, dressed in one of her black business skirt suits and high heels, quickly attracted the attention of several nearly naked subs whom she managed to brush off as she made her way over to Annabelle. Annabelle was next to a short man dressed as a schoolgirl who had his back to her. At least she assumed he was a man because of the venue. On the street he would have gone unnoticed as just another schoolgirl. As Amanda arrived, the schoolgirl was looking away. The two women exchanged greetings until Annabelle said, "Don't turn your back, young lady, I want to introduce you to Amanda." The schoolgirl turned round to face Amanda. I fainted, but apparently Annabelle managed to catch me before I fell to the floor, then lowered me onto a nearby chair. Amanda did not immediately recognize me, but when she did was equally shocked, yet managed to keep her composure and was the first to speak. "We know each other really well, Annabelle. He is my financial advisor. Perhaps it would be best if you left me to deal with this rather awkward situation." Annabelle left Amanda to it, grateful to get away from the embarrassing meeting which she had unknowingly instigated. Amanda looked down at me as I was still recovering in the chair. She gave me a glass of water from the bar and studied me more closely. She now recognized the school uniform of St. Catherine's School for Girls, a convent school in her hometown. The same uniform her daughter Leanne had worn as a primary schoolgirl before they had moved. Gray knee-length high socks, a little gray knife-pleated skirt, blue blouse and striped tie. A gray cardigan trimmed on the hem and cuffs with black and light blue, plus a gray blazer edged in light blue. All topped off with a gray berry with the blue convent school badge over a cute shoulder-length wig. She thought I looked like a real St. Catherine's schoolgirl. The thought pleased her immensely that with my soft features we could easily pass as a mother and her 15-year-old daughter. "Well, this is a turn-up. You look much better in skirts, and the St. Catherine's uniform really suits you. Very pretty." I was still speechless with embarrassment. There was no way to explain myself, it was clear for all to see. Surprisingly, Amanda did not seem disgusted, in fact she appeared very pleased. "You are a submissive and a sissy, aren't you, Nigel?" What could I do but nod my head? Think of all the time we have wasted. I am going to take charge of you, young lady. Time to go home. She took hold of my wrist and led me to Annabelle Smythe to apologize for our early departure. "Sorry, Annabelle, but I have things that need my urgent attention." I quite understand, Amanda. The changing room is over there. Nigella will not be changing, we're going as she is. With that, Amanda dragged me to the exit, opened the door and gave me a sharp smack on my school skirt, and suddenly we were on the busy street. I was terrified. Amanda turned to me. Walk normally, Nigella, and no one will take any notice. You look fine, just stay close to me. We headed down the street towards the tube. By the time we got there, no one had looked and pointed, so I began to relax a bit. It was one thing to be dressed as a schoolgirl in private, but completely different to be out in the community. We got on the Central line, before changing to the Northern line. Still no issues, so, I have to admit, I was now getting a thrill from being able to pass in public as a teenage schoolgirl. We made the relatively short walk to Amanda's mansion, where we both celebrated the success of our journey. Once we had settled down, we sat in silence for a time, both delighted with our new relationship. Later, we agreed that I should move in with her and her teenage daughter Leanne. We would be very discreet about our desires and only play when we were with like-minded people or in the privacy of home. It was an added bonus I could actually pass, but we still had to be careful. The recent journey was a spur-of-the-moment thing and couldn't be repeated in an area where we might be recognized. Suddenly the door opened and in walked Leanne. A younger version of Amanda. Now a confident young brunette, already 5 feet 7 inches and mature beyond her 15 years. What are you doing home from school at this time, Leanne? I didn't feel very well this morning, so I went to see the doctor. He said I had picked up a bug and prescribed some aspirin. I then rang school and they told me to take the day off. The girl had been studying me whilst giving this explanation to her mother. She then turned her attention to me. Nice to see you again, Mr. Brown. You look really cute in that St. Catherine's uniform. I have read all about cross-dressers on the internet and how a lot of you are very submissive and like to dress as young girls. Have you got the school coat, scarf and summer dress, and are you wearing a pair of gray regulation school knickers? We were flabbergasted at her daughter's depth of knowledge and her casual acceptance of the situation. Amanda and I burst out laughing at her daughter's perception and the absurdity of it all. I was so surprised I couldn't begin to answer her questions. Leanne's reaction was, "What's so funny?" which made us laugh even more until Amanda announced, "Looks like we have your babysitter, Mr. Brown." "No problem, Mother. I could do with the pocket money and I am sure I can manage, Mr. Brown." Or an alternative scenario, "Make sure you are wearing a nice pair of frilly satin panties for our next meeting, Nigel." Over time we had enjoyed harmless light-hearted teasing at each other's expense, but this last telephone conversation was something else. Amanda Stonier had sounded serious, so despite her lucidity, I could only think she must have been drinking, and so I forgot all about it. As her financial advisor a week later, I kept the appointment at her house where she met me at the door. Amanda made an imposing figure. With her regular trips to the gym, she was super fit with a strong, powerful, toned body. Now in her late 30s, the tall brunette had lost none of her beauty. So when I looked up into her face, as usual, I was intimidated. It was not only because she towered over me, but also the fact she was also so much more strong-willed and intelligent. As a greeting, she would normally bend down to kiss me on the cheek. Not this time, however. She came in close, surrounded me with her arms, and lifted me off my feet to bring me up to her eye level. "You're as cute as ever, so nice to see you again, Nigel." She nuzzled my nose, then put me down. It was exactly the kind of greeting a woman would give to a small child. I hardly had time for embarrassment as she took a firm hold of my wrist. "Come along, dear." She then led me into her comfortable sitting room and sat me down closely next to her on a settee. "Now, Nigel, first things first. Are you wearing frilly satin panties?" I was speechless and confused. "Trousers down, Nigel." "Look, Amanda, it's time to stop this joking and nonsense. I am here to advise on your financial affairs. I am certainly not joking, Nigel. Trousers down now, or I will have to take them down for you. I got up in order to leave and turned my back on her. Suddenly I felt a strong arm around my neck as she wrestled me to the ground. I struggled desperately, but it was a one-sided match. She quickly got on top of me and was concentrating on my trousers. She obviously had every intention of carrying out her threat. I tried to roll away, but it was no use as I felt strong fingers around my waist and the unmistakable hissing sound of a zip being pulled down. She grabbed the waistband and with several sharp tugs had my trousers around my ankles. She then got up, leaving me lying on the floor beneath her with my underpants exposed. Nigel, I did tell you what I would do if you weren't wearing frilly satin panties. So I will be taking you over my knee for a spanking on your bare body. Her words hardly registered as I was still recovering on the floor. The next thing I knew, there were firm fingers gripping one of my ears, pulling me, crawling towards the settee where Amanda sat. I tried to pull away, but the pain was too much as she gradually pulled me up and over her long nylon-clad thighs. She was preparing me for a spanking. I made one last attempt to roll off, but she had an arm across my back and had raised her knees to have me helplessly dangling hands and feet in the air. It was at this stark moment that I knew, without question, Amanda was going to give me a spanking. A childish spanking that would only end when she decided. You aren't wearing frilly satin panties, so you will now take the consequences for your disobedience. You must realize, Nigel, if I wasn't willing and able to give you a spanking, the threat would have meant nothing. My underpants still protected my upturned bottom, but not for long. She took hold of the waistband as I attempted to reach back in a futile attempt to stop the inevitable. Slowly she pulled them down to my knees to expose my defenseless bare bottom. I could feel the cool air on my white cheeks as she maneuvered me into exactly the right position for a spanking. She raised her hand and delivered the first spank to my right cheek, then to my left, and quickly built up a rhythm. Before, the thought of a spanking was almost abstract, but now it was actually happening. The feeling was only too real. My mind was scrambled as she continued the spanking. All I could think about was my poor sore bottom and the utter humiliation of being under Amanda Stonier's complete control. I had seen mothers giving their young children spankings, and I now knew, at first hand, how those children must have felt. My reaction was soon much the same as those children as I descended into tears. Now, Nigel, are you going to attempt to stop me putting you in a pair of frilly satin panties, petticoats, and pretty dress, or do you want me to continue your spanking? Please, please, no more spanking. I will only stop your spanking if you promise to be a good girl and do as I say without argument. I promise. What do you promise, Nigella? I promise to be a good girl and do as you say without argument. There, that wasn't so hard to say, was it, Nigella? She might have thought it was easy for me to say because she had treated me like a child and I had reacted like one, but it wasn't. The frightening thing was that the recent event was so similar to that I had previously observed between the mothers and their spanked children. Up you get, take off your shirt and socks, I want you totally naked. Hurry up, no dawdling. She spoke to me as if I were a child, and like a disciplined youngster who had just been given a spanking, I simply did as she instructed. Step into these frilly satin panties so that I can slide them up your legs and into place. The petticoats come next, then let's slip this pretty dress over your head. Turn round so I can zip you up. Keep still while I fit this lovely wig and put on these white peak-frilled short socks and white Mary Janes. There you go, all dressed up nicely. I stood meekly before her, feeling absolutely ridiculous, fully dressed as a 7-year-old girl ready for a party. I just knew it. You look far better in a dress than trousers and make a very pretty girl. Come and sit on my lap. You have an apology to give and a promise to make. I sat on her lap and knew what she wanted me to say. I am very sorry for not wearing frilly satin panties, and I promise to be a good girl. She held me tightly as she kept me sitting on her lap, confident in the knowledge she had forced an apology and promise from me. I am pleased you have promised to be a good girl, Nigella, and accepted your new status as my little girl. Leanne turned her attention back to me. I asked you a question, Mr. Brown. Are you wearing a pair of St. Catherine's gray regulation school knickers? Amanda interjected. I was joking, Leanne. You will not be babysitting Mr. Brown. What you are seeing here is just a game and not real life. Apologize to Mr. Brown and treat him with respect, as from now on he will be living here with us. In fact, in many ways, he will more like a parent or even a father figure to you. Leanne immediately understood her mother was being serious, so apologized to me, but in a clever way. I am sorry, Mr. Brown, for asking if you were wearing regulation St. Catherine's gray school knickers and thinking I would be your babysitter. By the way Leanne looked at me and her tone of voice, I was not altogether convinced of her sincerity. However, the apology appeared to satisfy her mother, as looking at me she said, "We can now dispense with the formalities. It's all right for Leanne to call you Nigel, isn't it?" The answer was in the question, so I merely nodded my head in approval. Not that my approval was necessary, as Amanda had already made the decision. Mother, I am glad you have found someone. I have always liked Nigel and am sure you will be very happy together. With that, Leanne went to her bedroom to catch up on her school homework. She was a very bright girl and quickly breezed through her work, which left time for her to ponder on the new family situation. She was amused and a little annoyed at her mother's absurd concept of me being a father figure. Nevertheless, she might be able to manipulate me against her mother to get what she wanted, and it would be nice to have another person to drive her around. Space in the 6-bedroom mansion was not a problem, so on balance she considered the whole new living arrangements to be a good thing. She knew that sooner or later her mother would be away on business, so she and I would be alone together. A 15-year-old schoolgirl alone with a man more than twice her age. Normally a scenario that might have caused her concern, but not in this case. She knew there could only be one babysitter, and it was certainly going to be her, despite what her mother said. The thought of a confrontation with me over the issue thrilled her to bits. She was a very determined girl and was confident I would submit to her authority without the necessity for force. However, if required, she relished the prospect of using her physical superiority to get me firmly under her control. The more she thought about it, the thing that irritated her the most was that her mother wanted her to respect me like a parent. How could she possibly do that with me sitting downstairs dressed as St. Catherine's convent pupil? It would be much easier for her to accept me as a schoolgirl at Carmel Convent than a parent. After all, she could hardly envisage me at a meeting of her school's Parent-Teachers Association. However, she could imagine me in a class below her at school. She mused that I would fit in very well, and judging by what she had seen would probably accept being a real convent girl without too much fuss. She decided that she would do her level best to make that happen. Over the next 6 months we settled down at Amanda's mansion. Leanne treated me with a condescending manner, certainly not like a parent, more like a younger sister. This disconcerted me a lot, but Amanda didn't notice anything untoward. It was as if Leanne was biding her time. With Amanda's encouragement, I let my, already longish hair, grow to shoulder length. She said it would create more authenticity to our role-play games. We also decided to sell my small business and house in our hometown. This would take some time, so in the meantime I had to continue to endure the regular daily commute. By this time Leanne had formulated a complicated plan which relied heavily on her internet studies of cross-dressers and submissives. She found that when certain opportunities arose they were like moths drawn to a flame. She would use this knowledge to her advantage. Her mother had given large and continuous donations to Carmel Convent, so the headmistress, Avril Hiley, and her mother had become firm friends. Half the girls at school were boarders, so money was always welcome to help maintain the buildings, boarding houses, and large grounds. Leanne found an opportunity to speak alone to the headmistress when she was on one of her visits to their home. After normal pleasantries, Leanne asked, "What can we do about the thief taking our school knickers?" "I didn't know that was happening, Leanne. It must be very annoying for you girls." "I will increase security to stop it happening." "Yes, that should work, headmistress." Leanne, as part of her master plan, had been taking the knickers and other items of uniform which she would return when her plan came to fruition. Over the next few weeks, more items disappeared and the girls were getting really frustrated. The headmistress said there was little more she could do unless they could catch the culprit. On the headmistress' next visit to her mother, Leanne brought the subject up again. "The culprit will probably be a boy or man. A sneak thief, and even if we catch him, the courts will only give him a warning and a small fine." "That's probably true, Leanne." "Well, headmistress, I think the punishment should fit the crime. If he likes school knickers so much, we should dress him in the full regulation Carmel Convent school uniform. Then force him to attend school like any other girl." "That is a stupid idea, Leanne. A man dressed as a convent schoolgirl would look ridiculous and stick out like a sore thumb. The staff and the rest of the girls would not accept that." "All right, but if when in uniform he actually looks like a schoolgirl, would you agree to my suggestion?" The headmistress was anxious to get away from this silly conversation based on an eventuality she considered impossible. So with an air of impatience she replied, "If you agree to stop this stupidity, I promise to do as you suggest." Leanne quickly agreed. The first stage of her plan was in place. A girl, Linda Thompson, who was a full-time boarder, had just left school in a hurry. Her father, who worked as a government official in Hong Kong, had been in a car crash and was seriously injured. She barely had time to pack a suitcase to catch a flight. The 14-year-old girl left her room full of her remaining clothing and all her school uniforms. This was just the chance Leanne needed. The next stage would depend on my reaction to the information she was about to give me. She knew from her studies men of my inclination were slaves to their desires. If the opportunity presented itself, they found it very difficult to resist. Carmel Convent was 6 miles away, on the way to my small office, so instead of Leanne taking the bus, I would often give her a lift to school. One Tuesday morning, as we drove through the leafy suburbs, it gave her the chance to work on me. "Nigel, have I told you about poor Linda Thompson?" "No, Leanne." "Well, it's terrible for her. Her father was seriously injured in a car crash in Hong Kong, so she had to rush off straight away to catch a flight." "Oh, that's an awful thing to have happened. Will she be able to cope, and what sort of girl is she?" "She's quite a girly girl, but she will cope as well as most with the help of her mother. She is a pretty blonde but looked quite flustered when she left. She's only the same height as you, so normally wears high heels when in mufti. However, she was quite unsteady on her feet until she was persuaded to wear flats." Leanne continued, hoping she wasn't laying it on too thick. All she had time to do was change out of her school uniform and pack a small bag. Normally boarding girls have to pack all their clothes and uniforms before leaving, but she just didn't have the time. I expect her room is a real mess. As I drove up the long one-way drive through the woods to the imposing main Victorian school buildings, Leanne pointed out one of the boarding houses. "Look, there's Queen and Boarding House." Linda Thompson's room is on the second floor in the corner overlooking the tennis courts. The boarders will now be all at breakfast before lessons, and even the house mother will be away for most of the day helping to organize the playing fields for sports day tomorrow. With an air of apparent indifference to the information I had been given, I casually asked, "What about security, Leanne? Deserted boarding houses are common here and nothing ever seems to go missing, so no one bothers." She couldn't have set the bait more lavishly. Now to see if I could resist temptation. I dropped her off at the main buildings and followed the drive round to the public road. Leanne watched me drive off before doubling back towards Queen and House. She found herself a spot in some bushes with a good view of the boarding house entrance. She settled down quietly to await developments. Instead of turning right as usual, I turned left back towards the convent school entrance, then parked up on the quiet road to think about the risk. I watched cars enter the school drive, but their number soon dwindled to nothing as the start of the school day passed. I had a golden opportunity to try on the convent school uniform of a pretty 14-year-old girl in her own bedroom. I wasn't going to steal anything, I would just have a little fun dressing up then leave. I decided to take the risk. Leanne was just about to give up when she noticed a figure moving cautiously in the woods near the drive. I had fallen into her trap, and now it was just a matter of time before she landed her catch. She watched me enter and decided to give me 10 minutes before finding the headmistress to accompany her to Queen and House. I found the stairs and made my way to Linda Thompson's bedroom. It was easy to find as each room had a girl's name on the door. Linda's door was not locked, so I stepped inside and closed it behind me. The thrill of being alone in her bedroom was intoxicating. Leanne was right, it was a mess, as if the girl had left in a hurry, but there strewn on the bed was her Carmel convent school uniform. I quickly stripped off and took hold of a pair of bottle green school knickers name-tagged Linda Thompson. I stepped into her knickers and felt the leg elastic gripping my thighs as they slid into place and the soft warm cotton enveloped my bottom. Next, her white bra, which gave me the semblance of development as it gathered in my excess skin. Followed by Linda's light green check school dress. I desperately hoped it would fit and wasn't disappointed as it fitted perfectly, the skirts falling to just above my knees. After buttoning up the dress from the waist, I put my arms into her dark green school jumper and pulled it over my head and over the dress to my waist. I turned back the light green trimmed cuffs and adjusted the trimmed waistband so it sat neatly. Then I made sure the dress collar sat correctly over the light green trimmed V-neck of the jumper. Linda's uniform fitted me so comfortably and everything felt just so right. A pair of white ankle socks followed by black lace-up school shoes came next. All fitted well on my small feet. It was amazing to think that, as a man, I needed exactly the same sizes as a typical 14-year-old girl. I looked in the mirror on the wall and knew, with my delicate features, small stature and long hair, no one would suspect I was anything other than a Carmel convent girl. To complete the picture, I put on the striped dark and light green school blazer topped with the summer boater. I twirled around in delight, with skirts swishing, reveling in my reflection. It was at this moment that the headmistress and Leanne entered the room. The headmistress demanded to know why a girl she didn't recognize was there. "That isn't a girl, he's my mother's boyfriend," Leanne exclaimed. The headmistress and I were both speechless as Leanne went on. "He likes dressing as a schoolgirl. I bet he is the sneak thief who has been stealing our knickers and other things." I found my voice. It is true that I like to dress like a schoolgirl, and I know it is very wrong, but I haven't stolen anything. The headmistress, Avril Hiley, was still coming to terms with the fact that the person before her was not a girl. She felt sorry for me. I hadn't done any real harm, so she was inclined to let me go with a strict warning. Leanne spoke up. "I am sure he is responsible for the thefts. I bet he has some stolen things in his car." "Well, if that's true, it is a very different matter." "Then let's check his car," demanded Leanne. The headmistress agreed. I wanted to change into my clothes, but the headmistress, with a combination of amusement and punishment, declined my request. She was astounded how I looked and walked like a girl. Outside, a breeze had risen, so I had to hold the boater on with one hand and the school dress down with the other in a most girlish manner. When we reached the car, nothing incriminating was immediately found until the boot was opened. To my shock, it was full of knickers and other recognizable items of Carmel convent uniform. The headmistress took my car keys and marched me back to Queen and House, with Leanne happily following on. She announced she was going to telephone the police. Leanne spoke up. What's the point? He will only get a fine, and you promised if the thief looked like a girl you would enroll him into the school as punishment. Also, he is my mother's boyfriend. Imagine the embarrassment it would cause her. Why don't you speak to my mother first? The headmistress had to admit I would not be out of place at Carmel Convent. So that was not an issue, so agreed to speak to Amanda Stonier. Amanda was furious with me over the whole affair but certainly didn't want the police involved. If the price for her boyfriend was to be a Carmel Convent schoolgirl, then so be it. She was sure I would not be happy about it, but as I had brought it upon myself, what more appropriate punishment could there be? To lose my adult status would be a salutary lesson for me. She thought dressing like a schoolgirl was one thing, but actually living the life of a convent schoolgirl was quite another. So it was decided that I would start school on the following Monday for a period of a month. Leanne went to her class while Avril Hiley, the headmistress, took me to the shoe shop after I had changed back into my own clothes. Now we were alone, she suddenly took hold of my hands, pushing and pinning me against a wall. I tried to struggle to get free, but the tall woman was too strong as she forced herself against me. As my head was forced into her ample cleavage, I could hardly breathe. I just love weak little sissies like you. Now you are going to be a girl at my school. I am going to have such a lot of fun with you. Another dominant woman, I thought, as she slowly stripped me of my clothes. She then proceeded to fit me out with all a girl needs to attend Carmel Convent. The full uniform, dresses, blouses, skirts, games kit, aprons for domestic science. Everything. It was all packed into a cardboard box for me to take home. After dressing back into my own clothes, I went to work, but nothing got done as I was so worried about having to face the wrath of Amanda. That evening, with Leanne watching on, Amanda told me what a fool I had been and was extremely lucky not to be in a police cell. She explained it was only because of Leanne that I had escaped that fate. I couldn't explain how the missing knickers had been found in the boot of my car, although I had a good idea of who was responsible. It was pointless to argue about it though, as with my record, no one would believe me. None of it would have happened anyway if I hadn't made the decision to go to Linda Thompson's room, so it really was all my own fault. Now that there was no danger to her reputation, Amanda had calmed down and began to think the situation was quite hilarious, bizarre, and most of all sexually thrilling. You really can't help yourself, can you, Nigel? I want to see you in your new full school uniform. Go and put it on now. Given what had happened, I could hardly refuse, so without enthusiasm I put on my Carmel Convent uniform and presented myself to Amanda. She could see I took no pleasure in the situation but considered I would jolly well have to get used to it. She outlined my immediate future. Next Monday you will be starting your first day as a Carmel Convent girl. So from now on you will be dressed and treated like a 14-year-old girl. It will help you to get used to your new status. Even to me this made sense, but all the same the reality didn't bear thinking about. I was ready to refuse when, sensing this, Amanda grabbed my wrist and dragged me upstairs. I will not accept any arguments or tantrums, young lady. You will do as you are told. I am doing this for your own good. Despite my desperate attempts to fight her, it was no use. With a few swats to my bare thighs, she soon had me in a spare bedroom next to Leanne's. She literally threw me onto the bed and closed the door. This was definitely a girl's bedroom with a mirrored dressing table and soft feminine furnishings. Amanda opened a closet door to display an array of teenage dresses, skirts, blouses, and strappy heels. In the drawers were revealed panties, bras, slips, and tights. Everything a teenage girl needs to look her best. Take off your convent uniform. It is getting close to your bedtime, she said. For God's sake, Amanda, it's only 9:30. I know what time it is. From now on your bedtime is 10 p.m., half an hour before Leanne's. I wanted to defy her as she looked down at me, ready to use physical force to control me if necessary. We looked at each other for a long moment until I lowered my gaze. We both knew it was a sign of my meek submission to her authority. She dressed me in a pink nightie and frilly dressing gown before taking me downstairs for a cup of bedtime cocoa. At 10 p.m. precisely, she gave me her instructions. "It's bedtime, dear. Up to your new bedroom now and straight to bed. No dawdling." A short while later, Amanda came to tuck me in and gave me a motherly kiss on the forehead. She closed the curtains and turned out the bedroom light. Then wished me night-night before quietly closing the bedroom door. Up to this point, I thought it could still be just one of our role-play games. Yet somehow this was different. The realization began to dawn on me: this was no longer a game. It was real life. As far as Amanda was concerned, I was now her daughter. The following morning, the new family living arrangements were confirmed when Amanda came into the bedroom. There were some explanations and new rules. From now on, you can no longer call me Amanda. The reason being, you are now my youngest daughter. You have come to me from living with your father, who has remarried. I am now your mother or mummy. My mother's name was Rosemary, so now your name is Nigella Rosemary Stonier. There was a finality to her statement that brooked no argument. She picked out a bra, panties, slip and dress. Quickly helped me into them, followed by tights and little strappy heels. She brushed my hair into a girlish bob and in no time had me ready for my first full day as a teenage girl. When we got to the kitchen, Leanne was there in her convent school uniform. She looked at me with smug satisfaction. No longer a laughable father figure, effectively now her younger sister. "Mother, can I tell all the other girls my sister will be starting at school on Monday?" "I don't see why not, Leanne. Nigella has some things to do, but she will be ready by then." "She looks ready to me now. I always liked wearing that dress, but it just got a bit too small for me." "It really suits Nigella," Leanne exclaimed as she left to catch the school bus. A bus that I would no doubt be catching the next Monday morning. I decided to reason with Amanda. Look, I didn't steal those things. Leanne must have put them there to incriminate me. Avril highly would have let me go but for that. Do you really expect me to believe that? Leanne wouldn't do such a thing. Any more of your nonsense and you will be over my knee, young lady. But I persisted and stamped my foot in annoyance. This made my skirts dance in a girlish display of petulance which brought an amused smile to Amanda. I was getting dangerously close to a spanking. Amanda knew I was an honest person and had to admit Leanne could be a devious girl. Yet she was also aware of my weakness and was therefore in a quandary over whom to believe. She decided to humor me on this occasion and agreed to confront Leanne that evening. In the meantime, however, she had to prepare me for school. Nigella, even if it is true what you say, you will still have to go to school on Monday. But why? Because you trespassed onto the convent school grounds and sneaked into Queen and boarding house. Went into a 14-year-old girl's bedroom and dressed yourself in her Carmel convent uniform. That's why. Amanda went on. You did a terrible thing and are very lucky the police have not been informed. You have your older sister Leanne to thank for that. The headmistress has graciously agreed to enroll you at the school as punishment. You should be very grateful. Put like that, I did understand her point. Yet I was still finding it hard to accept that for all intents and purposes, I was now going to be treated like a 14-year-old girl. With Amanda as my mother and Leanne as my 15-year-old big sister. Another thing, you do not refer to the headmistress as Avril Hiley. She is headmistress or Miss Hiley to you. You must learn to respect your elders and betters. Do you understand, Nigella Rosemary Stonier? Yes. Yes, what? Yes, mother. That's better, Nigella. We have a lot to do. A trip to the salon to tidy up your hair. A manicure and ear piercing, girls are allowed studs. A little light eye makeup and eyebrow shaping should make you an even more presentable teenage girl. Amanda drove me to a salon where she had booked me in for a makeover. A place known to be sympathetic towards transgendered men. When we arrived, the young beautician asked about the man involved. She seemed genuinely shocked when Amanda pushed me forward. Really, it's unbelievable. He already looks so feminine, it is difficult to see how we can make him look any younger or more girlish. Nevertheless, with the addition of a few very subtle cosmetics, it will leave absolutely no doubt as to her gender. It was strange sitting next to Amanda in the salon as we both had our hair done. My pretty stylist started a conversation. "My name's Jenny, I like your dress, where did you get it?" With Amanda sitting so close by, I decided the safest thing to do was carry on with the charade. "Thank you very much, Jenny. My name's Nigella. I don't know where the dress came from. My mother bought it for me." "You lucky girl." "Yes, I know. She buys me lots of clothes, and I also get hand-me-downs from my sister." "Your mother mentioned you are starting at a new school on Monday." "Where are going, Nigella?" "Carmel Convent. We get a few girls from Carmel here. They all say it is a wonderful school but quite strict." "Well, I will have to be on my best behavior, won't I?" We both laughed as Jenny replied, "You certainly will, young lady." I found it amazing that I had so easily slipped into conversation with my stylist. She was so nice and friendly as she carefully cut and trimmed my long locks. I noticed Amanda smiling with approval. Jenny then got to work on my eyes with just a little very subtle eyeshadow. My eyebrows had always been virtually non-existent, so she added some liner to give them a thin feminine look. The ear piercing hurt a bit, but with pretty studs inserted, the facial makeover was complete. My emotion on seeing my reflection was a mixture of shock and despair. Shock that I now completely looked like any young teenage girl, and despair that my sense of self as a man was being stripped away. My immediate future had been settled by Amanda and Avril Hiley. On Monday, I was going to Carmel Convent as a schoolgirl whether I liked it or not. That evening, Amanda confronted Leanne, who made an admission but stoutly defended her actions. All right, I did lay a trap for him, but he didn't have to walk into it. The fact he sneaked into a schoolgirl's boarding house and dressed himself in Linda Thompson's convent uniform just proves he can't be trusted. Since he now looks like any young teenage girl, it is only fitting he should be treated like one. Amanda was pleased Leanne had admitted her part in the events and had to concur with her conclusions. I could not be trusted, so needed to be kept under strict supervision. What better way than being made to attend Carmel Convent as a pupil? Leanne was extremely pleased with herself. She had completely changed the status quo. I was now effectively her younger sister. Without being told, I went upstairs at my bedtime of 10 p.m. Put on a nightie and read a little before Amanda came to check on me and put me down for the night. It all took place in such a natural manner. It was as if a certain mother and daughter normality existed that had become second nature to us both. Leanne was playing in a school lacrosse match the next morning, which Amanda wanted to watch. Put something warm on, Nigella. It can be quite cold on the touchline. I found some black 70 denier tights, white panties, and a short red pleated tartan skirt, which I matched with a warm red cashmere jumper over a white bra. A pair of black flat-heeled boots, fun fur-trimmed coat, and red beret completed my ensemble. Amanda complimented me on my choices as we gazed at our reflections in the large hall mirror. It was still hard to comprehend that we were actually a woman and man of the same age. We really did look like a typical mother and her young teenage daughter. Being a Saturday, plenty of parents and children were in attendance at the match. I was amazed how fast the game was played. The girls were very aggressive as they fought for possession. Some of the clashes were ferocious, which frightened me. Amanda noticed, so took a hold of my hand and drew me in close in a gesture of comforting protection. Both teams were dressed in Airtex tops, pleated gym skirts and matching long socks. The Carmel girls were in green and the opposition in brown. Glimpses of elasticated green and brown knickers could be seen during the intense tussles. At halftime, we all went to a pavilion where the adults were given a choice of alcoholic drinks. I was ready for a beer, but Amanda directed me towards a table where the children were gathered to collect lemonades or orange squash. Amanda turned her back on me to talk with other parents in an obvious sign my place was now with the children. A young brunette girl came up to me. She was a little taller than me and very pretty. "Hello, my name's Susan Lewis. Is your sister playing?" "Yes, Leanne Stonier." "My name's Nigella." "Oh really, you are the new girl starting on Monday. You must be very proud of your big sister. She is our star player." I nodded in agreement, although the conversation did appear to be yet further confirmation of my new position in life. "We will be in the same class, what fun." She smiled with enthusiasm and I found myself reciprocating her delight. The fact Susan accepted me for what I appeared to be gave me confidence but worried me that I was descending into something beyond my control. After that we chatted merrily away without inhibitions. Like two young teenage girls excited at getting to know each other. By coincidence, Amanda was talking to Audrey Lewis, Susan's mother. "It looks like the children have already met," Audrey Lewis commented as Susan and I walked over to them. Mrs. Lewis introduced Susan to Amanda. "Good morning, Mrs. Stonier," Susan said. "Mother, this is Mrs. Stonier's daughter Nigella." Amanda looked down at me, waiting for me to respond in the correct way. "How do you do, Mrs. Lewis?" "Very well, thank you, Nigella. Your outfit is very cute." "Thank you, Mrs. Lewis." "You really think so?" "I certainly do, Nigella. A cute outfit for a very pretty girl." I couldn't hide my blushes at her compliment. Were my blushes embarrassment at her apparent complete acceptance of my age and gender? Or was it pleasure on my part to be actually thought of as a pretty girl? "Come along, girls, the second half is about to start," Amanda announced. Amanda and Audrey Lewis led the way. Susan and I linked arms and followed on, our coats brushing together as we walked. The second half was even faster and more ferociously contested than the first. On a couple of occasions when the play came near to us, I joined with Susan's squeals of fear. "Keep further from the touchline, girls, or you might get hurt." "Susan, stand behind me, and Nigella, stand behind your mother," Mrs. Lewis told us. Gratefully we did as she instructed. I took my place behind Amanda for protection. After the match, my new friend Susan said, "See you at school on Monday, Nigella." "Yes, I will look forward to that, Susan." Why the hell did I say that? It actually sounded like I was enjoying the prospect of attending Carmel Convent as a 14-year-old schoolgirl. My punishment was going to be a thing to endure, so I really might as well try and make the best of it. Having a friend like Susan would help me to get through the allotted month. After all, there was no way Elle would be asked to stay any longer, was there? On the Sunday evening, Amanda had been invited to an orchestral concert which I really wanted to attend. However, she flatly refused to let me go. "I am sorry, Nigella, it doesn't finish until late and way past your bedtime. Remember, you have school in the morning." "It's not fair, I am really an adult man, you know." "Look, Nigella, do adult men hide behind women for protection? Do they allow themselves to be dressed as girls? Do they get spanked?" I of course had no answer to these home truths. "Well, answer me, young lady." "No, Amanda." "No, what?" "Sorry, no, Mummy." "That's right, Nigella. The sooner you completely accept your position, the better. You will wear a nice full-skirted dress, petticoats and Mary Janes this evening lest you forget your girlish status. We both secretly enjoyed these confrontations. It gave her an erotic thrill to crush my little rebellions and assert her authority. For me, although I wanted to fight her, I liked it when she put her foot down and challenged me to defy her. When I backed down, it just confirmed my inferiority and her motherly but soft protective dominance. You are not going to like what I've decided, Nigella. Why, what's that? While I am out this evening, Leanne will be your babysitter. That's ridiculous, she is only 15 years old. So you agree you need a babysitter but only object to her age. You're forgetting, Nigella, she is now your big sister. No, of course I don't need a babysitter. You're twisting my words and I am not going to let her tell me what to do. I have made my decision, Nigella, or would you rather I ask Ruth Lansman? This shut me up. A member of our social group, the statuesque Ruth Lansman being my babysitter, didn't bear thinking about. I had never got on with the formidable, opinionated young woman. During our last social event at her mansion, she had actually announced for all to hear, "Nigel, your opinions are naive and childish. If I had anything to do with it, you would be lying in a cot with a spanked body, dressed in a nappy and a dummy in your mouth." This brought great laughs from the crowd and reduced me to red-faced, embarrassed silence. This had particularly amused Amanda, as she understood that I would probably secretly quite like to be treated in such a way by the imposing beauty. Of course, no one knew of our unusual sexual relationship, but it was so near to the bone that it really unnerved me and was why it delighted Amanda so much. After I had recovered from Ruth Lansman's insult, I tried to enter the conversation again. Only for her to say, "Nigel, children should be seen and not heard. I have a cot upstairs if you don't keep quiet." This elicited more guffaws from the crowd. So whenever I wanted to give an opinion, a mere glance from her would bring me to silence. This is why, from then on, Amanda would always invite Ruth to our social gatherings. She told me, "You are such a chatterbox. Mrs. Lansman knows how to keep you quiet and not monopolize the conversation." The memories had come back to haunt me. Stop daydreaming, Nigella. I am sure Mrs. Lansman would love to see you in a pretty frock. Do you want your big sister Leanne or Mrs. Lansman, an experienced mother, to be your babysitter? At least I would have a chance against Leanne. With Ruth Lansman, a strong, mature mother, as my babysitter, I would have absolutely no chance. She would have me under control and in a nappy and cot in no time. So I meekly replied, "Leanne." "And who is that?" "My big sister Leanne, Mummy." "That's right, Nigella. Your big sister." Despite my Hobson's choice, I still found it hard to comprehend Leanne had been put in charge of me. It was too much for me to accept that a young female less than half my age had been given that authority. I was determined not to let it happen. Leanne was very pleased to be told of her babysitting work for the evening. The confident young girl relished the responsibility, sure that she could handle any disobedience from her mother's boyfriend. When Amanda left, I waved goodbye to her at the front door. Leanne was suddenly behind me, holding my shoulders, pulling me backwards as she closed the door. Leanne was anxious to quickly gain the upper hand. "I hope you are going to be a good girl, Nigella." "Don't be stupid, Leanne. You know this is just a game and now it is ending. No one in their right mind would believe a teenage girl had authority over a man." "Well, Nigella, it was a game, but no longer. This is now reality and you really are under my authority. It is my responsibility to make sure you are in bed on time so you are ready tomorrow for your first day at Carmel Convent. You've taken leave of your senses, Leanne. I'm going to watch some TV." Leanne stepped in front of me, blocking my route. She stood, arms akimbo, squarely facing me. her young full firm breasts thrusting forward under a tight black jumper, her long legs clad in designer jeans in contrast to my dress, petticoats and Mary Jane shoes. I looked up, only to be met with a determined steely gaze. Suddenly I was filled with apprehension. She was obviously ready for an argument, even a physical confrontation. From watching her playing lacrosse, I knew she was a powerful girl. Agile, fearless, and strong-willed. Leanne was following her mother's advice. Remember, submissives are weak-willed and hate confrontation. They are essentially cowards who will submit when faced by a determined female. Physical enforcement is rarely necessary, as long as the threat is clear. You must be firm with decisive instructions. As Leanne looked down at me, she could see the sudden uncertainty and hint of fear in my eyes. There will be no TV for you, Nigella, until I say so. Your hair is a mess and needs a brushing. I hope the hairbrush will not be required for anything else. The 15-year-old took a hold of my wrist and pulled me forward, almost smothering me in her cleavage. She turned me round and delivered a sound swat to my petticoat bottom. The whole thing had happened so quickly that I found myself dithering. She released my wrist and pushed me towards the sitting room. Get those pretty little legs moving, Nigella, no dawdling. Leanne was following more of her mother's advice. Don't give him time to think, bombard him with instructions and orders to keep him off balance. His slow-witted brain will barely be able to compute you are taking charge. Without thinking, I found myself hurrying, dress and petticoats swishing, in the direction she'd ordered. Subconsciously, to avoid another smack and partly to allow me time to think at how to put a stop to all this nonsense. Not realizing it was too late. The girl had already decisively established her authority. All she had to do now was ram home to me my inferiority, and my young feminine status would be absolutely confirmed. She kept up her orders, leaving me no time to consider what she was doing. Sit down there, Nigella, she instructed as she picked up a flat-backed wooden hairbrush from a table. Now, Nigella, let's get your hair brushed and held in place with a nice Alice band. Any objections, young lady? She stood in front of me, slapped the palm of her hand with the back of the implement, the implications of which were obvious even to my feeble mind. I needed more time to think, so obediently nodded my head. You will find life a lot easier and less painful if you do as you're told, like a good girl. As she set about my hair, Leanne realized how much fun she was having and was beginning to understand her mother's delight at being in control of such a pathetic male. Whilst she attended to my hair, I began to question myself. Surely I could stand up to a 15-year-old girl. The trouble was she was so bold, decisive, and sure of herself. Perhaps if she had not been so tall, fit, and confident, I would have had more courage to defy her. Yet my natural timidity was beginning to undermine any attempt on my part to object to the young girl's authority. The way she had slapped the palm of her hand with the hairbrush had left me in no doubt that she would use it if necessary. Was I strong enough to stop her putting me over her knee and giving me a jolly good spanking? At that crucial moment, I knew I was not. The outcome would be the same with or without a spanking. My shoulders slumped at the realization. Of course, I hated my capitulation to the clever girl. She had shown herself to be the stronger both physically and mentally. The shame I had been forced to endure was just a reflection of those facts. As she put the hairband in place, our eyes locked. Leanne knew at that moment she had complete and total control. There was no resistance left in me. She got a sublime glow of satisfaction at her easy victory. It would have been nice to give me a spanking, but on balance she thought my sublimation was even sweeter this way. No physical force required, as her mother told her, just firm orders with implied threats had been enough. With a playful spank to my dress and petticoats, the 15-year-old girl gave me her instructions. Run along now, Nigella, you can watch TV if you wish, however make sure you are ready for bed on time. You have a big day tomorrow. with my Mary Janes tapping girlishly on the wood flooring and my petticoats swishing. I did as my babysitter told me. Strangely, now that I had fully accepted the situation, I felt relieved. Leanne had taken charge, and that was the end of the matter. She would make the decisions and carry the weight of responsibility. She had stripped away what remained of my adult life, leaving me with no choice but to obey her demands. I found comfort in the knowledge I was now firmly under the authority and protection of a strong, sensible girl. A girl who had rightly taken charge. Why? Because she could and did. When Amanda returned at around 11 p.m., she asked Leanne how things had gone. "Very well, Mother." I thought at one stage he might not do as he was told. Yet when I challenged him, all courage seemed to desert him. He is a soft, gentle person, Leanne. He doesn't like making decisions or confrontation and really, deep down, just wants to be told what to do. Yes, I fully understand that now. However, I am a bit worried for him at school tomorrow. There are a lot of bossy girls at Carmel Convent. Well, try to keep an eye on him. Did you put him to bed on time? On the dot at 10 p.m., and I also laid out his full regulation convent uniform. Good, tomorrow should be an interesting day. I think when he sees the uniform and realizes he really is going back to school, there might be a chance of a tantrum. I woke early at 6 a.m. As far as I was concerned, everything that had happened over the last week had taken place but could not continue. After all, few people had been involved. Only Amanda, Leanne, and the girls at the salon. All right, I had fooled Susan Lewis and her mother and had not been questioned by anyone at the lacrosse match. However, it was quite a different matter to expect me to get away with masquerading as a convent schoolgirl for a full month. There would be too many people to convince all the teachers and 350 girls for a start, the ancillary staff and many others. I couldn't believe Amanda and Avril Hiley would actually take the risk. If the authorities found out, we all would be in serious trouble, not least myself. I convinced myself my punishment was over, the risks were just too great. So I turned over to get some more sleep, not noticing the Carmel Convent uniform Leanne had quietly left on a bedroom chair. At 7 a.m. I felt Amanda shake my shoulder. "Wake up, sleepyhead. Time to get ready for school." Very funny, Amanda. We both know that will not happen, the risks are too great. I am not going anywhere, leave me to get some more sleep. Nigella, I have not got time for this. Get up this instant. Ignoring her, I turned over and shut my eyes, truly believing she would not pursue the matter. I heard her sigh in frustration before she tugged off my duvet, leaving me uncovered, lying on the bed in just my pink nightie. I was furious, so quickly got out of bed and stood up to confront her. Haven't I made myself clear? I am not going to any school. I will not be told what to do by you any longer, so leave me alone and get out of my bedroom. I stamped my foot to emphasize the point. To me this felt like a manly gesture, but to Amanda it must have looked like a young girl having a tantrum. She let my temper dissipate, before trying to explain why I had to go to school. However, I was in no mood to listen, so Amanda decided this was a time for firm, decisive action. I've had enough of this, Nigella, you're going over my knee for a spanking. She advanced towards me. Her tall, firm, full womanly hourglass figure swaying. This was not going to be a mutually consenting scene, this was going to be a real battle for control. She tried to take hold of my wrist, but I managed to twist away. She came again, and this time she wrapped an arm around my small waist and half lifted me onto her ample hip. Suddenly upended, I felt the blood rush to my head. I squirmed in a desperate effort to escape as she forced me towards the bed. I am going to teach you, once and for all, you do as I say at all times. As Amanda sat on the edge, she held me face down and across her lap. She held my hand behind my back, and with my feet off the carpeted floor, despite my frantic struggles, I found it impossible to roll off. She was wearing a fluted gray pencil skirt, black tights and high heels, so when she raised her knees my free hand was left grasping at thin air. My feet further from the carpet, kicking wildly but ineffectually. Of course I had been in this position before, but then there had been a strong element of consent. This time there was absolutely no consent. I still tried to fight her and somehow avoid the inevitable, but it was useless. She raised my pink nightie to reveal my bare white bottom, a color that would soon be changing to a decidedly different hue. I knew this spanking was going to be different. These were not going to be love taps, these were going to be proper disciplinary spanks, as if I really was an extremely disobedient teenage girl. There were reflections everywhere, the fitted mirrored wardrobe, sliding doors, the freestanding mirror, and others. Unless I kept my eyes closed, the view of my over-the-knee spanking at Amanda's hands was unavoidable. Keep your eyes open, Nigella. I want you not only feel this, but also see me giving you a spanking. Being spanked totally against your will by a woman. I promise it will be something you will never forget. All I could see was what appeared to be a frightened young girl in a pink nightie being held over the lap of a beautiful statuesque woman. In dismay, I watched as Amanda raised her hand backwards and high above her head. The movement tightened her soft gray lambswool jumper to emphasize her full magnificent breasts. Then her palm descended with great speed and force onto my right bottom cheek, her breasts bouncing with the effort. The pain went from the very top of my head to the tips of my toes. As promised, Amanda was giving me a spanking I would never ever be able to forget. She alternately spanked my cheeks, quickly bringing tears to my eyes, and soon had me bawling like a naughty child. She was relentless, her mission to completely break me so that I would completely accept my diminished status. All I could think about was the pain in my bottom and the shame of watching Amanda giving me the spanking. After 5 minutes she stopped. Now, Nigella, are you going to listen to why you have to go to school today? Yes, I replied through my tears. Yes, what, Nigella? Sorry, yes, Mummy. The reason is, if you don't, the headmistress will report you to the police, which will result in a sentence. In prison, goodness knows what would happen to a sissy like you. So the best place for you is Carmel Convent School for Girls, isn't it? Of course she was right. I just had not the intelligence to fully understand our predicament. It appeared I really did need a grown-up to tell me what to do. So I answered. Yes, Mummy. Amanda helped me to my feet. Nightie off, Nigella, then put on the bottle green school knickers. I slipped the regulation convent knickers up my legs. Feeling the elastic grip my thin thighs and the interlock soft cotton envelope my burning bottom. Turn round and slip your arms through the bra straps so that I can fasten it at your back. There's a good girl. I did as I was told, then Amanda left to help Leanne with breakfast, leaving me to put on the Carmel Convent uniform. I slipped into the green check summer school dress and then put the regulation green jumper over the top. These 2 items alone changed me from looking like any teenage girl to a typical Carmel Convent schoolgirl. My small feet went into a pair of white ankle socks, followed by a pair of black size 5 lace-up shoes, which completed the picture. I looked in one of the mirrors and was immediately reminded of why I now found myself in this terrible situation. I was dressed almost identically to when Leanne and Avril Hiley, the headmistress, had caught me in Queen and boarding house dressed in Linda Thompson's uniform. The only items missing were the striped blazer and boater which waited for me downstairs. Yet the circumstances were completely different. For reasons of self-gratification, I had voluntarily dressed myself in Linda Thompson's clothes and got erotic pleasure from the young girl's uniform fitting me so well. This time, I had been forced by Amanda to wear a uniform, and it was actually mine. Supplied by the headmistress from the school shop and now name-tagged Nigella Rosemary Stonier. This wasn't fantasy, this was reality, this had a sense of permanence. When I went down for breakfast, neither Amanda or Leanne made any comment as to my appearance. It was as if seeing me dressed in the same way as Leanne was entirely normal. A convent girl ready for school. After breakfast, Amanda was all business. "Girls, we are leaving in 10 minutes. Get your blazers, boaters, and satchels." For my first day, Amanda drove me and Leanne to Carmel Convent. Leanne sat in the front while I was bundled into the back with the child locks engaged. To make matters worse, when we arrived, Ruth Lansman was dropping off her 15-year-old twins Rebecca and Sarah, classmates of Leanne's. Ruth looked me up and down, then laughed out loud. Her twins were already on the path to school. The astute young mother turned to Amanda and asked for a quick word. "Please wait, Leanne, with this young lady," Ruth requested. "How did you recognize him?" asked Amanda. "I never would have in a million years but for the ring on his finger." "Oh yes, what a stupid mistake. I told you to take off that engagement ring, Nigella." While Leanne and I waited, Amanda quickly explained in detail what had happened. Ruth then turned to me. I had prepared myself for a tirade of scorn and derision that Ruth Lansman was about to heap on me. Surprisingly, it was not the case. Perhaps it was because she no longer saw me as a challenge. Well, this is a turn-up for the book, Nigella. All the argumentative little pipsqueak wanted was to be dressed as a Carmel Convent schoolgirl. If I had known, I would have had you in Rebecca's or Sarah's school knickers and uniform in no time. I have suggested you should be in a nursery, and I haven't changed my mind. Although possibly your mother has made the correct decision about your punishment. Time will tell. Your secret is safe with me. After all, us girls should stick together. By the way, the Carmel Convent uniform really suits you. You make a very convincing pretty girl. Amanda looked at me expectantly. Thank you very much, Ms. Lansman, for those kind words. Nice to hear you have learnt respect, Nigella. Although I still think the best place for you would be in a baby dress and nappy, lying in a cot, with a dummy in your mouth. I blushed with embarrassment. Stop teasing him, Ruth, Amanda said. I am not teasing him, Amanda, merely stating a fact. If he stayed at my house, that's where he would end up. Well, let that be a warning to you, Nigella. Make sure you behave, otherwise you will be spending some time with Ms. Lansman. I didn't share their amusement, as I wasn't sure if they were joking. Was it a threat that, given the opportunity, Ruth Lansman had every intention of carrying out? Off you go now, girls, Amanda said. The two sophisticated, statuesque women exchanged smiles as they watched us walk away. As Leanne and I entered the school, through the main entrance, the headmistress was there saying the odd word of greeting to the girls as they passed. She glanced at us and quickly said, "Good morning, Leanne." "Good morning, Nigella." "Good morning, headmistress," we said in unison. At the end of the large Victorian entrance hall, a door led to a massive cloakroom area. It was strange to be amongst so many identically dressed convent schoolgirls as we all put our blazers and boaters on the hooks. Now, like all the girls in just my school dress and jumper, I turned to see Leanne had disappeared. Suddenly, I felt very alone, frightened and vulnerable. "Hi, Nigella. I hardly recognized you in your convent uniform." It was Susan Lewis. My apprehension quickly evaporated at the sight of my new friend from the lacrosse match. "Hi, Susan, I could say the same for you. Come along, Nigella, this way to morning assembly. The headmistress has asked me to show you around and introduce you to the other girls in our class." There was the sound of clattering feminine feet and high-pitched girlish voices as 350 girls slowly filed into the large ornate assembly hall. Like the rest of the Carmel Convent buildings, it had an air of antique splendor but a little austere, typical of such institutions. The hall had a central aisle with seats, 10 across, on each side. As I sat next to Susan, I brushed my dress under, keeping my knees together. We were halfway down a row of girls all sitting in the same way. I didn't feel out of place as I glanced left and right, our bare knees just showing beneath the skirts of our dresses. As I looked around, I noticed the youngest girls were in the front rows and the older 5th and 6th formers at the back. We were roughly in the middle. The girls in our row must be my classmates, I thought. When I studied them more closely, it was obvious some were more developed than others. A few, including Susan, had pronounced curves. As I contemplated my own chest, with only small buds evident, I felt a pang of envy. Good God, what was I thinking? Somehow, to hide my true identity, I knew I had to consciously remember to act and speak like a teenage girl. The trouble was I was now having some conscious girlish thoughts. I could only hope this total immersion in a female world would not have a permanent effect on my persona. Susan led the way to our classroom, where she started introducing me to the other girls. There was Charlotte, Diana, Catherine, and Belinda, but she was suddenly interrupted by a teacher entering the room. Why I was surprised to see a nun, I don't know. It was after all a single-sex convent school. I joined the rest of the girls, as we all stood up behind our desks. The room had gone completely silent as the nun made her way to her table at the front of the class. "Good morning, girls." "Good morning, Sister Maureen," the class replied. "Sit down, girls. I understand we have a new girl in class today. Stand up, please, Nigella." I did so. "Ah, there you are, girl. Introduce yourself, young lady." "My name is Nigella Rosemary Stonier, Sister Maureen." "Very good, Nigella, you can sit down now." As simple as that. Without any fuss, I had been fully integrated into the class at Carmel Convent. The school day had begun and I would just have to go with the flow. My first day went without incident. There appeared to be no doubts as to my age and gender. Of course, this situation, in my imagination, would have been extremely erotic, but in reality it was not. The loss of my adult status crushed everything. Even more worrying, as the days passed, I began to relax without having to think too much about making mistakes. Amanda noticed this and one day stated, "This is meant to be awkward for you and a punishment, Nigella." I am not enjoying it, I am hating it. I am just trying to make the best of it. "Oh, really? Then why have you arranged to go shopping on Saturday with Susan Lewis and 3 of your new school friends?" I didn't have any choice. Don't you know anything? They are my best friends. A refusal would have looked odd, and anyway, I need some spare elastic for my school knickers. It seems to me you have assimilated too much. You really do want to go shopping with the girls. Don't be ridiculous. I am not going to discuss your stupid notions any longer. I have some homework to do and I have to ring Susan about something. Amanda had noticed my schoolgirlish concerns and phraseology with a knowing smile as I turned and ran up the stairs to my bedroom. Something had obviously happened at school, but she had more important things to worry about than silly schoolgirl intrigues. When I got to my bedroom, I was still annoyed with Amanda. She simply just did not understand. The reason I wanted to speak to Susan was only to have a chat about a new dress she had bought. We also talked about the argument between Charlotte, Diana, and Belinda earlier in the week. It was really about something and nothing, but it had upset Susan, me, and the rest of the girls in our class. The next day we explained to them that it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. When the girls realized what had actually happened, they quickly made up and we were all friends again. A few tears were shed, so we had a group hug and decided we would all go shopping together on the Saturday. I suppose if I had explained this to Amanda, she might have understood. On the other hand, what right did she have to know what was going on between me and my best friends at school? Anyway, I wanted to do my homework that Sister Maureen had set. She was a really good teacher and I didn't want to let her down. In bed that night, my only thoughts were about my school lessons and what I was going to wear for the shopping trip. Without realizing it, I seemed to have slipped, quite naturally, into the life of a 14-year-old convent schoolgirl. Saturday was great fun. I noticed the girls were becoming aware of their female charms. Skirts were a little too short and tops a little too tight, emphasizing their developing curves. Again, I felt a bit jealous, which depressed me a little despite the fun I was having. Later, Amanda, as mothers often instinctively do, noticed my slight anxiety. "What's wrong, dear?" "Nothing really. I am just a bit worried that I am not as developed as the other girls and it is going to give me away." Amanda wasn't surprised by this. "Well, what about a bit of extra padding at your bust and hips, or perhaps a course of female hormones? Are you going bloody mad?" "A little more padding will be enough." "Well, it was just a suggestion, and be very, very careful with your words. In the last few weeks you seem to have fitted in so well with the other girls at school. I have never seen you so happy. I think the headmistress will agree to make your stay permanent and I can easily afford the fees." I was flabbergasted by her statement. It sounded like she would be content for me to remain as her daughter. Although a small part of me quite liked the idea, it was not something I would want as long as the decision was mine. "Now I know you are deranged, you stupid cow," I replied. Amanda's demeanor suddenly changed. She was furious. "How dare you use such words? I was planning on US3 going to the coast tomorrow and for bank holiday Monday. Leanne and I will be going." "You will not." She picked up her mobile and left the room. On her return, my worst fears were realized. "You'll be pleased to hear Ms. Lansman has agreed to babysit you until Monday evening. Rebecca and Sarah are coming for a sleepover and will be going with us to the coast. She wants to deal with you on her own." Later, Ruth Lansman dropped off her girls and Amanda plumped me into the back seat of her car. Ms. Lansman looked like the cat who had got the cream. I absolutely hated this woman. I considered she thought herself in some way superior. The sort who liked to belittle others. Amanda assured me otherwise. She is actually a very kind person and my closest friend. It's just she doesn't suffer fools gladly and you do say some stupid things. I had to admit, however, apart from her personality, she was very attractive. Not pretty, more striking with strong womanly features. Even taller and Amazon-like than Amanda. She was just so damn confident and sure of herself. I was soon to learn she had every reason to be. "We should be back at about 7 p.m. on Monday," Amanda said as she handed me over. "I will keep her safe and secure," Ruth said with a wink to Amanda. The room was quite large and decidedly feminine. Judging by the furniture, it was unquestionably a little girl's pink nursery. Ms. Lansman shut the door firmly behind her and slowly appraised me before eventually saying, "Here are my rules. You will be dressed and treated like an infant baby girl. You will be fed only baby food in a high chair and sleep in a cot. You will not be allowed to talk and will have regular naps. While you are awake, you will be in a playpen. Any disobedience will result in a spanking." I made a bolt for the door but quickly learnt Ruth Lansman was just as able to deal with me as Amanda. It wasn't even a contest as she threw me to the floor and ordered me to strip. No matter what, I was determined to resist and stood up. She knew she could easily overpower me. However, if I was going to fight her, it would take a little more time. She therefore decided on a different path, so took a small brown bottle and soft cloth from a shelf. "This is chloroform, Nigella. I am going to put you to sleep." She put a few drops on the cloth and advanced towards me. Then pushed me against the bars of the cot as I struggled in desperation. With an arm around my neck holding me, she clamped the cloth over my nose and mouth. When I awoke, I was lying on my side with my knees slightly bent. Eyes slowly adjusting to the semi-darkness as I looked through vertical bars. I closed and opened my eyes to make sure it wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't. I was in a baby's cot. I tried to straighten my legs, but they came up against bars. There had been no concession to my adulthood. It was just a normal standard baby's cot, but easily able to carry my slight frame. The only difference maybe was the barred top. I tried to force it off, but it was securely fixed. I slumped down in despair at the realization that I was stuck in the cot like a real baby. I tried to gather my thoughts, which drew my attention to the frills around my head and body, the bulk around my bottom. I reached down to touch the unmistakable feel of soft toweling, fixed with a large pin to each hip. I had been pinned into a baby's nappy. Reaching up, I felt the cloth on my head and the frills surrounding my face. A baby's bonnet knotted tightly under my chin. The pink floaty material around my body could be nothing other than a baby girl's dress. I screamed in frustration as it all came back to me. Ruth Lansman's rules. She had already achieved most of her objectives. What's all this screaming about? I don't want another sound from you, baby girl. I'm going to put a stop to that. She lifted off the crib top, and as Elle tried to sit up, placed a strong hand on my midriff. In the other hand, she held a baby's dummy. I kept my mouth firmly shut. Open up, little one. I kept it shut, but she merely pinched my nose, completely cutting off my breathing. My mouth soon opened for a breath. The woman quickly popped the dummy in, held it in place, and released my nose. Then tied the attached ribbons behind my head. The dummy wasn't going anywhere now, as she condescendingly patted my cheek. There, Nigella. Remember, I have 2 daughters, so I'm quite used to dealing with unruly baby girls. She replaced the top, leaving me to my shame in my nappy, sucking my dummy. A baby girl in a cot. All I could hear was the tick-tock of the nursery clock and watch the hours pass. Eventually, a new issue arose, just as Ruth came in to check on me. I needed a pee. Without any communication, she sensed my problem. You are in a nappy, baby. You must know what it is for. I will come back to change you if necessary. I held out for as long as possible, but in the end things began to flow. I had wet my nappy. I lay there in abject helplessness, my only concern my wet, soggy nappy. The hated woman was achieving all her aims, ticking one off after another. When she returned, I was too upset to even acknowledge her presence or rhetoric. Have you wet your nappy, Diddums? She set about her work and quickly had me pinned into a fresh, clean nappy. There had been no futile struggles from me. All done, sweetie. You will find life a lot easier if you cooperate. I was filled with wonder that I was actually grateful that this detestable woman had changed my nappy. She raised the cot side but left the top off, testing my resistance. There was none. What was the point? I will be back soon to take you downstairs for your feed. When she returned, my heart sank. She was carrying a set of baby reins. I was compliant now as she had me kneel down and fitted me into the reins. I want you to crawl, Nigella, she instructed. I looked up at her towering hourglass figure, at her striking beauty, her strong hands holding the reins. How could I possibly think I could stop Ruth Lansman making me do whatever she wanted? A sharp tug on the reins got me moving forward and bumping on my bottom down the stairs. She led me across the solid-floored hallway to the kitchen. My view only of her shapely legs and high heels clicking authority. A chair loomed before me. She removed the reins and put her hands under my armpits, using her powerful arms to lift me into the air and plop me into it. Swung the attached table round to snap shut at my front, effectively locking me in the high chair. She put a baby's bib on me and opened a jar of baby food. It tasted horribly, but by this time I was hungry, so ate obediently. The same sort of thing would be happening to babies throughout the land. After my feed, she released me from the high chair and ushered me, crawling, into an adjoining playroom. Lifting me as before, she sat me down. Again I was confronted by vertical bars, but in addition cuddly toys and plastic bricks. She had achieved the last of her aims. I was in a playpen. She was humming happily to herself and seemed to be enjoying herself immensely. It galled me to know my regression was bringing her such pleasure. Yet since she had established complete control, her treatment of me had been kindly. Further, her ministrations, her forcefulness, her cajoling satisfied a deep craving within me. A craving to be shamed by a beautiful dominant woman. As I cuddled a doll in the playpen, I began to think perhaps I was extremely lucky to find two tall, strong, rich and beautiful dominant women who each enjoyed controlling me in their own individual way, willing to share me as a teenage daughter or a baby. I tried to put such thoughts aside, but they remained, lingering malevolently at the erotic edge of my feeble mind. Ruth lifted me out of the playpen and sat me on her lap. She cradled my head in the elbow of her left arm and brought a bottle to my lips. She gently pushed the teat in place and smiled down at me expectantly. I began to suckle, filling myself with warm milk. Halfway through I felt myself becoming drowsy. She removed the teat and began to rock me whilst quietly singing. Rock-a-bye baby on the treetop, when the wind blows the cradle will rock, when the bough breaks the cradle will fall, and down will come baby, cradle and all. The rocking and the lullaby was so soothing that I drifted off to sleep in her arms. When I awoke, I was back in my cot. My determination to escape was lost, as Elm knew it was impossible. She was too strong and vigilant. Actually, it wasn't too grim. As long as I wasn't naughty, Ruth Lansman was kind. Cocooned, oblivious to the outside world, I felt safe and secure in my cot. Later, Ruth came into the nursery. She lowered the cot rail and once more lifted me onto her lap. This time I put my arms lightly around her neck to show my acceptance of her superiority. I have a confession to make, Nigella. I have very similar sexual inclinations to Amanda. I enjoy humiliating and punishing little men like you. I also know you secretly love being under the control of a woman. Why pretend otherwise? Why not accept the situation and enjoy? You might as well, because, like it or not, you are going to be spending the next 48 hours as my baby girl. I gave my answer by snuggling further into her arms. When Amanda came to drop off the twins and collect me on the Monday evening, I was wearing the same dress in which I had arrived. I hope she didn't give you any trouble, Ruth? A little bit at first, but once she was made to understand my rules, she was as good as gold. Did you enjoy your time with Ms. Lansman, Nigella, and would you like to visit again? Oh yes, Mummy. Well, Amanda, I would be very happy to babysit your daughter again. Perhaps Rebecca and Sarah might help next time. The two dominant women had come to an understanding. They intended to share me. The rest of the month simply flew by. At last I would be away from the regimentation of convent schoolgirl life. No more early bedtimes in Sister Maureen's classes. No more shopping trips and fun with the girls. At the end of the last day of my punishment, I was summoned to the headmistress' study, presumably to go through the formalities of my leaving. Of course, Amanda was there, but also surprisingly, Ruth Lansman, who seemed to be amused by something. The headmistress, Avril Hiley, sat behind her desk, and I sat between Amanda and Ruth Lansman, opposite the headmistress. The meeting appeared unnecessarily formal. The headmistress began. Good evening, ladies and Nigella. Ms. Lansman is here as chair of the PTA. It is your final day of punishment, Nigella. I must say you have been a very good girl and Sister Maureen tells me you have done well in class. Thank you, headmistress. I have tried to do my best and obey all the Carmel convent rules. The headmistress smiled at my reply, whilst glancing somewhat anxiously at Amanda and Ruth, as if she was coming to the crux of the matter. Well, I will get straight to the point. Nigella, your mother has decided you will remain a pupil here and Ms. Lansman and I have agreed. The decision has been made, so that will be all. I was still reeling from the announcement as Amanda got me up from the chair, bundled me out of the study and into her car. There was a long silence between us as Amanda drove. Eventually she spoke. It is obvious you are far happier living as a 14-year-old convent girl. You look and sound like a girl and with your submissive nature prefer to be under the guidance and control of grown-ups. You would not make the decision yourself, so I have made it for you. You will get pocket money like any other teenage girl your age and there will be further visits to Ruth Lansman's. She glanced in my direction and saw me smiling. Yes, a mother always knows what's best for her daughter.